Today on Face the Nation, a $700 billion bailout for the U.S. financial system. The first question we'll ask Treasury Secretary Paulson, will it work? The Treasury Department presented the costly bailout plan to Congress this weekend. What will happen if it's not enacted? What caused the Treasury Secretary to propose this dramatic action? That's where we'll begin. Then we'll talk to two key men in Congress dealing with the plan, the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, Democrat Barney Frank, and the ranking Republican on the Senate Banking Committee, Richard Shelby. I'll have a final word on a game with no rules. But first, the big bailout on Face the Nation.
Face the Nation with CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Bob Schieffer. And now from CBS News in Washington, Bob Schieffer.
And we begin this morning, of course, with Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for coming. Let me just summarize what I understand that you have proposed to the Congress, and that is you want the Treasury to have the authority to buy these bad mortgages and these other financial instruments from financial houses and from banks. You want to hold these instruments for a while, as I understand it. Then you will try to sell them. You're saying that this may now cost as much as $700 billion, which I believe is probably more than we've spent on the Iraq War. It's an unprecedented thing that you have proposed here. I want to ask you first, what did you see in this situation that caused you to conclude that you would have to take this radical and very expensive step?
Bob, let me just correct you on one thing. The Iraq War was expenditures. This is purchasing assets, holding assets, reselling assets with money coming back into the Treasury. The taxpayer is clearly at risk, but this puts the taxpayer was already at risk for what was going on, and this, I think, will minimize the risk and the cost to the taxpayer. Now, what did I see going on? Last week, you watched the equity markets, the stock markets, which most people see, drop by 1,000 points, then rally by 1,000 points on the news of this program. But underneath the surface, credit markets, capital markets were freezing up. And when the capital markets freeze up, then mainstream American companies have trouble raising money to do their job. Farmers will have trouble getting loans. Small business people will have trouble getting loans. This would then hurt the broader economy, more difficult to get jobs. People's budgets, family budgets at risk, retirement savings at risk. So this was a situation that we couldn't allow to go on. And this was a situation that had its roots in irresponsible behavior, lending practices, people borrowing money that they shouldn't have borrowed. That then a chain reaction to the financial institutions holding these illiquid assets. And when they get clogged up with the illiquid assets, and the financial institutions can't do what they need to do. So what we needed to come in was stabilize the situation. We felt this was the best way to stabilize the situation, unclog the system so that it can work. And then, of course, we're going to need to address the root causes of this and the excesses. We're going to need reforms.
Well, let me just go ahead and let me get that back to that in a minute. But what you sound like you're saying is that the whole system was on the verge of collapse.
I didn't say that. What I said was that the system was clogging up, and it was more difficult for companies to raise financing, and that would have been a worse, much worse for the American public, and that was a greater risk. The public is at risk. And so you started off talking about the costs and what the downside is. And, you know, I hate having to communicate this. And I hate the fact that the taxpayer is going to be at risk, but the taxpayer was already at risk. And I think this is going to minimize the cost to the taxpayer. And in terms of the system, let me just say this. we as a people always work through these situations. We will work through this situation, and we have a great country. We will work through it. We will, the markets will stabilize over time, and then we will do what we need to do to clean up the mess.
But let me go back to this, and you talked about this a little in the beginning. Do you see we have no alternative here? And if that's the case, what happens if this doesn't work?
Well,
I mean, if the Congress doesn't go along.
Bob, this is the least costly path, and I have every confidence that Congress will go along with this, because that doesn't mean everyone in Congress will agree. It doesn't mean that there won't be a healthy debate, but I am highly confident that we will get the authorities we need this week. Because Congress knows this is about the American people, this is about the economy, and we always come together at times like this.
This is going to send the deficit into uncharted territory, it seems to me. Is there a chance that the next president is going to have to raise taxes to find the money to run the government?
Well, the next president is going to have some challenges, and as we have challenges today, because what we're going through is an unprecedented period of time. And there's no doubt that debt issuance by the United States of America is going to go up. And I'm not minimizing this. I'm not minimizing it at all. But I want to continually emphasize, because sometimes people get confused, this is different than spending money you know you're never going to get back. This is buying assets, holding assets, and then selling assets. And although I can't tell people now what the cost of that process will be, and there is a risk, the ultimate cost will be determined by how quickly the economy is stabilized and what happens in the housing markets.
You said last week that you thought this would cost $500 billion, or that could be how much you wanted the authority to buy. Now you're saying 700. Is there a chance it could go higher?
I never said anything about 500. When I talked to Congress, I talked to...
Well, that was the number that was going around.
It might have been reported. But when I talked to the congressional leaders, I said we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that is needed. And we will ask for authorities up to a limit. And if that limit is $700 billion, that doesn't mean we'll go all the way there, or it doesn't mean that it will stop there and we won't ask for more. But that is, what we need is something that is big enough to get the job done. And so we'll ask for what we think is the right amount to give us plenty of flexibility to get the job done. And remember, the job is buying these illiquid assets to unclog the system and let the credit markets work the way they need to, and to restore confidence.
Let me tell you, some of the people in the system have asked me to ask you this question. How will you determine what these instruments, these bad mortgages, how will you determine what they're worth?
Well, that is going to not be an easy thing to do, but it's an important thing to do. Because right now, these mortgages are on the books of financial institutions, and because the system is frozen, there's not a market for them. There's not a market. And so what we need to do is come in at a level, provide a market for them, so that the institutions can do what they need to do, and under the very best circumstances, other private capital will then come in because they will see the market.
Who will be eligible for your purchasing these things? Will it be just U.S. institutions? Could it be foreign institutions?
Well, it should be. We want authorities to deal with financial institutions, all financial institutions that are doing business in the United States, hiring people in the United States, performing their role. Because remember, this is about the people of the United States of America, and it is a distinction without a difference to them whether the bank or the financial institution.
So it could include some foreign institutions. Are you asking other foreign governments to help as well?
Of course, and Bob, I'm glad you made that point.
Have any told you yet they will help?
We are urging others to do so. A number have expressed willingness to do so. This is a global financial system.
Can you tell us which ones?
Not at this time, but what we are doing, again, we're taking care of our situation. And I'm not saying anyone is committed to do this yet, but we've started that dialogue. And again, in terms of the United States of America, it is a distinction without a difference in terms of what's best for our citizens as to whether it happens to be owned by a foreign ownership or U.S. ownership.
Mr. Secretary, is this going to fix the situation, or is this a Band-Aid, a bandage? Is this something that's going to stop it from getting worse?
Well, Bob, what we're doing now is not going to make the turbulence disappear overnight. This is going to take a while to work through this situation, but this is a very strong step. The markets responded very favorably. This is about doing what's right. It's a major step to restore confidence in the markets and get them working the way they need to work. And I feel very strongly it's the right thing to do.
Mr. Secretary, I hope you're right. Thank you so much for joining us this
Thank
morning.
you.
We'll be back to talk to some key congressional figures about this in just a minute.